The Edmonton Fringe Festival is reaching out to groups who work with people with disabilities. This after the recent controversy around letters that the Fringe sent to 4 of its volunteers. The letters said the volunteers couldn't fill positions they'd held previously. After one of the volunteers posted the story on social media, the Fringe did apologize. And the festival later said they made a mistake by not having a conversation with the volunteers about how to find them new opportunities. And they've reached out to all 4 volunteers who got those letters. One of the advocacy groups the festival has approached as well for advice is the Gateway Association. Renate Burwash is the Director of Employment at the Gateway Association, and she's here now in our studio. Hi, Renate.
Hi.
What's your reaction to this story with the Fringe and the volunteers and just what happened there?
I think it's really unfortunate. I am glad to see that they reached out to us. We look at this as a teaching opportunity for not only the Fringe, because I'm sure they'll look at doing things differently. That's what they're hoping to do in the future, which is why they reached out to us, but also the community at large.
So what, looking at the details of the story, might the Fringe have done differently as they were dealing with these volunteers and what they want them to do on site and that kind of thing?
Well, I think if you have dedicated volunteers and supporters, you don't want to. I think they didn't have to let them go. I think it, comes to looking outside the box, and lots of employers are doing that and having to do that now, not just for people with disabilities, but all kinds of accommodations. So if you have some good volunteers, looking at accommodating them. And this is often really simple to do, and especially if they're reaching out to different organizations that can help them with that.
So you describe it as simple. What kind of thinking might go into accommodating and finding positions that work both for the organization and for the individual volunteers?
Well, when we work with businesses, we once we know what a job seeker is looking for and what they're good at, we'll go in and talk to businesses about what their needs are, obviously, what they need to get done, their areas of turnover and people missing shifts and things like that. And then we'll look at the tasks, and instead of looking at one job description, just switching things around. Maybe someone's really great at 3 of those tasks on that job description, but not all 10. But then you have a reliable employee. So it's just thinking about kind of shifting tasks around so they're all still getting done. Maybe fewer hours or things like that, or one of the bigger accommodations, we use.
Oh, is that right? Why is that sometimes an issue, not working the long, say the 8-hour, the traditional shift?
Sometimes that's just too stressful for a person to be working an 8-hour shift and multitasking too many tasks at one time. But when you look at kind of changing some of those things and looking at what good business sense that makes, and also, how they're, so many people that we're working with, their work ethic is fantastic, and having that rub off on other employees, or, what it does to workplace culture, what it does to the organization's image, and all those things.
It was interesting. We had an email when we were discussing this story yesterday from someone who said she'd volunteered in the past for events and festivals, and what would happen is she would always be put into a kind of a non-job or something that wasn't interesting, so that I guess they wouldn't get criticized for not having or turning away volunteers.
Right.
Do you hear that often, that the responsibilities aren't really great sometimes, and that's one way that places sort of accommodate or not accommodate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just because businesses, they don't know how to do it. And that's okay. The first step is just having those conversations with organizations like us, because we're not looking for charity. We're not looking for people to have positions that are going to take up all the business owner's time and money. We're looking for quite the opposite. We're looking for a good fit, something that is going to be successful for the business and for obviously the job seeker.
For the person, right? And so when you're talking to people with disabilities who are looking for employment, how often do you hear stories that they are frustrated or not confident, that kind of thing?
All the time. Almost everyone that comes into our office, the first thing they say is, people just don't understand me. And I think that's because, again, we all come with our preconceived ideas of what someone with a disability is like, and people are often scared of the unknown, right? So, but once you get to know someone,
and they want meaningful work, right?
Absolutely. They want to do a good job. Anyone that I've worked with, they want to succeed. They just want to be given the chance and the right, the key is the right fit, not just throwing people into jobs and hoping for the best. And that's where it takes some, thinking up front and maybe a little more time up front. But if businesses are willing to take the time, a little bit more time up front, then maybe they're not having to worry about all the turnover, the absenteeism, or, even things like safety instances, because all of those pieces, it shows people with disabilities, we don't have those issues.
Is there a huge demand for your services from people who just feel like they need an advocate or need some help going into the job market?
There's a huge demand, yeah. And a lot of people don't need a ton of accommodations, but it's really hard for someone who lives with a disability, especially those living with invisible disabilities as well, to go into an organization and it's do I tell them, do I not? And how do I, tell them I have a disability and then sell myself at the same time and ask for the odd little accommodation, which we all get accommodated at work.
Right, it's true. What would be an example of that, an invisible disability that someone might debate whether they reveal it or not?
So someone living on the autism spectrum, so many people live with Asperger's. A lot of the people we work with live with Asperger's. So they would not present themselves as having a disability, but then they get slapped with many other labels, like, they're different. There's something odd about that person. But, it's just the getting to understand disability and not being so afraid of it.
Right. Well, I suppose this whole incident with the Fringe has brought a lot of this into the light. And as you say, they sound willing to try to change how they've been going about things or not take the approach that they did here, which clearly didn't work. Renate, good to meet you this afternoon, and it's been really interesting hearing what you've had to say about this, and certainly a lot of people, I think, got a lot out of it in terms of accommodating people who have disabilities and where to start that conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
That's Renate Burwash. She's the Director of Employment with the Gateway Association here in Edmonton.